Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we are thrilled to be talking to the very talented creator, actor. I mean, this guy does everything. Former football star, Nnamdi Asomugha, who has a very provocative film called The Knife. We're going to kick things off by introducing you to the AAFCA members on the call today, starting with Derek Dunn in Washington, D.C., Nancy Green in Los Angeles, Tatiana in New York, New York, Jill Monroe in LA, new member Jasmine Stevens in Tampa, Florida, Tamara J in New Jersey, new member Derek Freeman in Los Angeles, the Compton Bulletin, all right, Karan Norwa Kelly in Charlottesville, Virginia, and Dana Abercrombie in the Big Apple. I'm going to let you guys do what you do so well, and I'll see you on the other side.
Busted. Come on, it's time for bed. Let's go.
Night, Daddy.
Night, baby. I asked my grandma once, what happens when you make a bad choice?
She's on the ground bleeding to death.
Is that her knife?
No.
The police, they'll look at us and they'll look at her and they'll come to their own conclusions.
All you have to do is tell the truth, right?
Speak to each of you. Shouldn't take very long.
Tell me what happened here tonight.
I heard a noise, came into the kitchen, and that woman was standing there. She attacked me.
That knife, did you recognize it? We have a few of them, so... Oh, so it's one of yours? I know you're scared. The truth here is everything.
What are you thinking?
I don't know.
Questioning a minor, mother is present.
Did your dad say what happened?
Wait, don't say a word.
Kendra?
I don't understand why you're trying to talk to her without me.
Hey! My grandma used to say, life presents choices, and choices lead to consequences.
Yes, hi, this is Karan Norwa Kelly with Karanism.com and Love Music Pleasure. I got to tell you, this film took me aback a little bit because we got to see a home invasion that went left. And it wasn't what I expected it to be. It didn't end the way I expected it to end. I want to know what it was like putting together a story to tell it this way from the perspective of the family and the immediate assumptions that were made by the police.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, the goal for me was always, how do we take a situation like this that we've seen so many times in films, and try to make it more nuanced? You know, that situation where you're seeing a Black family or a family of color and the cops come in and, you know, in your mind, you're like, oh, this is going to be bad. Someone's going to get killed by the end of this. And, you know, it's going to be so on the nose, so to speak. It's not to say that it doesn't happen that way, but I think just in terms of cinema and in terms of what we've sort of always fed to the community was that there were no moments of nuance, that there were no moments where, you know, actual discussion takes place, or you have to second guess the decisions that you're making, because of our history with law enforcement. And I think for me, that was the important thing. It was, how do we take a situation that we've seen so often and sort of flip what you're expecting, and show it from a different vantage point. And I think being able to do that, sort of, that can widen your audience, that can allow for a lot more empathy in the situation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Nancy Green here. And I was curious, I wanted to know, what inspired this story, and what drew you to doing this story at this time?
Yeah, that's great. The story came to me actually. There was some of it was already written. Or it was sort of like a very rough first draft of what the story could be, and my a friend of mine, Mark Duplass, sent it to me, and he really just wanted me to act in it. He had seen some of my other work, films like Crown Heights and Sylvie's Love and certain things, and he was just like, I think that you'd be great for this role. And, I jumped in on it, and immediately I sent him back like a ton of notes on the script. And he just, he's a very busy guy. And so he basically said, why don't you just take over writing? Um, and at that point I'd never written anything. But I think he trusted that I understood the story, um, maybe in a different way than he would. And so he wanted me to take over, and I took over writing. Page one just took over enhancing the characters and the story and seeing how I could make it that nuanced story that I was trying to tell. And then jumped into directing, which again was something that I wasn't expecting, but that's sort of how it all came together. And then within like 4 months, we were shooting it.
Great, thank you, and very exciting movie.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Jasmine from the Was It Good Though podcast. I do have a question. Within the final shot of Chris, did you have multiple ideas of how you wanted to express that particular scene to the audience? Or was it more so your intention to have the audience sit with Chris as he listened to all the details unraveling as the radio was playing?
No, that's so interesting. Thank you for asking that. The filmmaking process is so crazy because you can write a script and think that that's how it's going to go, and then once you start shooting, you realize, oh, that maybe wasn't the best idea. And then once you start sharing it with people, then you realize that you got to change it again so that stuff starts to make sense. And there was a completely different ending. I think we went through maybe 4 endings for this film. They all sort of had the same um, element, that same message. We did kind of want people to be thinking afterwards. There was a film that I had seen just before we started shooting called Anatomy of a Fall. And at the end of throughout Anatomy of a Fall, you're trying to figure out, did this woman push her husband, or how did he fall off of um, the top of their house, I believe it was. But I just love the fact that they were leaving the audience with a question, and making sure that the audience could think about it. And it wasn't this black and white, okay, this is how it ends. That's it. Everybody goes home either happy or sad, because I just don't think that's how things work all the time in this world. So we went through a lot of different ideas for the ending and sort of settled on, we started with Chris, this dad that's trying to make things happen for his family, that's hiding, a lot of things and trying to figure it out. And we should end with him and try to get inside his mind as he's hearing what they're describing at the end. And I think when we finally settled on that, we felt like we did it the right way.
You did great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jasmine.
Hi, Dana Abercrombie of the Coalition. My question is, there's a scene within the movie, one moment when he rushes back into the house because his daughter is having a panic attack through asthma that's going on. Can you talk about that moment of always, everything is on him at that moment, but still he puts his children at the forefront of everything, despite the fact that guns are literally being drawn on him?
Yeah, it's interesting because, again, that was a moment where, as I'm writing it, I got him rushing back into the house, and I thought, well, if he rushes back into the house, then they're going to pull guns, and then he's going to get shot and he's going to get killed. And that's the end of the film. And also, that's the same story that we've seen, multiple times. The dad is going to die. And so I started thinking, well, what's another way to bring that same level of fear? Because every second in those 3 or 4 hours of real time, there's a level of fear. So I said, how do we still bring that in, but keep him alive so that he can continue and also so that we have a longer film? And so I figured, if there is something around the kids, because a lot of times, again, when you see these stories, you never see, or you rarely see the child's perspective. A lot of times you're looking at the adults or you're looking at the cops, and that's where it stays. Everything stays above the kids. And having that moment there, along with other moments throughout the film, was just me saying, well, let's see what the kids are thinking. Let's see what's going on for them. How are they reacting? Because I know they're not calm. Are there panic attacks going on? They've never seen something like this before. They're sort of under the gun, so to speak, of like, do I tell the truth? Do I protect this family member? What's going to happen? And so I think having that scene for me was sort of symbolic of an overall feel of trying to make sure that the kids were well represented in this story, because we don't see that as often as we probably should.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
Nnamdi, what type of emotions are you hoping to invoke from the audience as director?
Boy, there's so many emotions, I guess, throughout. First of all, regardless of how difficult the story is with any film that I make, I want it to be entertaining. I don't want it to feel like homework. I don't want it to feel like this slog, sort of depressing thing. If we can find a way for it to feel like a great love story, or if we can find a way for it to feel like a great triumph or a tense thriller, then I think that entertainment factor I've fulfilled. And so for me, I think I wanted it to be tense. I wanted it to feel like it was real in real time. And then I think the other emotion at the end, the other thing that I wanted audiences to feel was a level of empathy towards the family. So I think like a lot of times when we do see this case, we can quickly sort of like brush it off as, oh, if they didn't do this, if they didn't do that. But I wanted people to see that we have to make decisions in those moments. You know what I mean? Like those moments aren't so clear and cut for us. We have a history of issues with law enforcement and those that are in power positions. And if we can find a way to have people that don't have those same challenges sort of see what we go through and see what our thought process is when we're in those situations, then I think we've done our job. It's just trying to bring a level of empathy throughout multiple communities towards the things that we face when we're placed in those moments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Samara J. for Noir Online. I wanted to know, Chris' character delivers a fine balance between masculinity and vulnerability. How important was it for you as a Black man to deliver the message of him being both afraid and protective at the same time?
I just think it's real life, So the importance is like, it's almost like how important is it to tell the truth on screen? And that's all that as actors, that's all we're ever taught. I was an actor before I was a director and a writer and a producer. And so my goal was to tell the truth. And in that situation, as a father, as a husband, you want to be strong, but you're still a human being. You're not superhuman you're not superhuman, but you do want your family to sort of feel like you are, because you also don't want them to be afraid, So, as a Black man in that situation, it's so complex, the emotions that are going on. And I think in writing it and in portraying it, it's such a difficult thing to do because you can't wear it all on your sleeve. It's not like um, I was going to say a clown show, but what I really want to say is like you don't want to over dramatize it. You know what I mean? Like there's so much that he's holding close to the vest. He can't have outbursts. He can't have like crazy tears. He can't show those level of emotions, but he still has to, he still has to be vulnerable. He still has to lead. And so it's important to show that because I think not just for Black men to see that to see themselves on screen and to be able to relate to that, but for everyone else to sort of see the challenges of what it takes for someone that's the head of the household to be in a situation like that.
How's it going, sir? Derek Dunn, Reviews and Done. Just a quick question. What was the rehearsal process like with Oscar winner Melissa Leo?
Yeah, Melissa was great. She's actually been phenomenal. She was phenomenal before we started shooting, while we were shooting, after we were shooting, and just someone that I could bounce ideas off of because she's been in it so long and she's achieved so much. And she's like, if I'm not listening to her, then there's something wrong with me. But Melissa, so the rehearsal process with her was really just reading the script. We read it a million times. We would have calls. We would go over the words that she was saying, the reasons why she was saying them. I was shocked that she trusted me so much just off the bat, because obviously I'd never directed. But we had enough conversations that she felt very comfortable with what I was doing. There was no rehearsal process in terms of like you would do on the stage. If you're doing a play or something on stage, you have actual rehearsal. You're going through all the scenes, where this person stands, when do they pick up the cup of water, all that type of stuff. For us, it was really what's the intention behind the words? Why did you write this? What are you trying to convey? And what's the best way that we can do that together? And she was great. The first time that I spoke to her, everyone was saying, oh, she'll never do this. Her character was initially written as a male, and then I changed it to a woman, and immediately I thought of her because I'd seen the movie Flight, with Denzel Washington when he's a pilot. And they're trying to figure out if he's drunk while landing a plane. And you go through this whole movie for like 2 hours or so, and you're in it with him, you're in it with him. And then in the last like 5 minutes, this woman shows up, and she's the head of the National Transportation Safety Board, and it's her job to sort of get answers from him at this hearing. And in like those last 5 minutes, I mean, if you go back and watch the film, she gives the most honest, brilliant performance of questioning him and acting like she's on his side. And yeah, everything's okay. Also, tell me, so you didn't have anything to drink? And there's just a line of questioning. And then at the end, she gets him to admit that he was drunk. And I remembered that, and I thought, no one could do this better than her. And it made me feel like she was perfect for the job. And so everyone said, don't try her. She's not going to do this. This is too small a project. And I just called her, and she jumped right in. And, it's been a pleasure working with her ever since.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah.
Hi, Jill Monroe, KBLA. So, hi. So for you with this project, as jumping in and writing, also first-time director, but you spoke about not wanting it to feel familiar as far as the beats and the way that we've seen stories like this played out before. What were those steps that you took in the writing process as well as on set to make moments sort of shift in what we're familiar with and sort of beat those expectations?
Yeah, I hadn't written before, so the writing process was very, actually, I don't want to say it was difficult. It was very fast. Most of the work that you're talking about happened in the moment. So I'm very much a like go with the flow type of person. As a director, I'm a best idea wins type of person. I come in with my plan, but I'm so open to whatever the day brings. You know what I mean? And so it was less about the writing process for me and more about what's going to happen on the day. What's the energy that we're bringing to the set today? Oh, does this feel right? How else should we say this? And a lot of it was, to me, it was the first thing that I told everyone when we got on set. And I said, less is more. The rule of this entire thing, I want you to know less is more, less is more. I don't care if it's the cameraman, we didn't have the camera doing any, like, sometimes the camera does backflips and like, or these close zooms, and then you're startled, and we didn't have any like sound of like a screeching knife or anything like that, and we didn't have any actors that were acting outside of themselves or anything like that. It was always less is more, because I felt like if we can make this feel as real as possible, then the audience will be tense on their own. We don't have to bring all of these sort of bigger elements into play. And so for me, that was it. It was really less is more. When you talk about the story of cops and people of color in this country, when you want to bring that to screen, the things that I'm drawn to are when you let me do the thinking more than you shove the idea in my face. And so in order to do that, it meant stripping things away, and less is more was sort of our theme.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Hi, Tatiana here with Medium Popcorn. And I know you wear a lot of hats as a screenwriter, producer, director, actor throughout the project. And so I'm curious to learn about any challenges you had during production that actually wound up strengthening the film.
Can you just ask it one last time?
Sure. Were there any challenges, limitations, obstacles during production that ended up strengthening the film?
Oh, such a good question. Were there any challenges that ended up strengthening the film? It's so hard to pinpoint them, because when you make a film, you have 1,000 challenges a day. Do you know what I mean? And I'm trying to figure out like what was the one that ended up strengthening, because along the way they all sort of strengthen the film. What they do is I always say, like, if you make the film that you intended to make, then you weren't listening along the way. And what the challenges do while you're on set is they just move the film into the direction that it's supposed to go in. And there's so many of those challenges. I can't think of the big one that jumps out, but I think just an overall statement of like, you have to be open to those challenges. That sort of feels like a life lesson. I'm talking to myself. You have to be open to the challenges, and you have to be open to the obstacles that come, because they really do shape the film. The film is going to tell you what it wants to be. And, if you're not listening, then you'll fail, I guess. I don't mean to be so harsh, but it's the way it is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I just had one more quick question. Just wanted to piggyback off your last response to my question, where you mentioned that the cop character was written as a male. So if the funding was unlimited and the budget allowed, who would you have put in that role if it was a male character?
Oh man, it's such a good question. Boy, that's tough, Derek, because I never saw it as a male. The character came to me as a male. When Mark first brought it, he said, well, I want this detective to come in, and and he's sort of this big guy, and he's gruff, and he's got to come in and he's got to change things around. And I was never drawn to it, ever, not once. To me, the first time I heard it, I was like, okay, that's not working. I've seen it before. What's a version of this that I haven't seen? Like, how can we do this different? So I never spent time with it as a male. So it's tough for me to say who I would put in as a male, because I don't see that character as a male at all. And I know, but I want to give you an answer. I don't know. Here's what I'll say. One of the reasons why it felt to me like the having that character as a white male was so on the nose was because the sort of the most impactful film for me growing up, I'm from Los Angeles. The film was Boys in the Hood. And I saw it, you know, I think I was maybe 8 years old or 9 years old, and I was not supposed to see it. And I remember my aunt snuck us in, me and my siblings, to see the film because she wanted to see it. And she was watching us. And I remember I left the film and I remember asking her, "Are you sure this wasn't real? Like, are you sure that's not real?" Like I didn't understand. At that point, my films were like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and like all these like childish things. But it struck me because if you go back and watch, sort of the most antagonistic cop in the whole film is a black man who I think pulls over the main characters maybe 2 or 3 times as they age throughout. It's the same black cop. And I thought it was such an interesting choice. I mean, as I got older, that John Singleton would do that, especially for a film about us. And I think that always stayed with me, that I want to see it differently. You know, I want to make sure that we aren't doing the same thing that everyone would expect, and bring that to the screen. So I don't know if that, I hope that helps, but I can't think of the one person.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, again. So being that this is not just your first time directing, but also you're directing yourself, what from your directing choices did you learn that will now inform your acting choices going forward?
That's great. I think it's interesting when you're directing yourself, you trust the director. Like you trust the director more than you might, because you know who the director is, you know, and so it's like you go in and you're acting and you know that you can take more risks, you know that you can take more chances. The lines don't have to be right spot on, you know, as long as the intention is there. You can be in the moment in a different way. And, you know, up until that point, I had never, you know, obviously I'd never done that. And so to me, it was like, whatever it is on the page, you know, this is how the director wants to see it. That's how you come in until they tell you otherwise. But now what it's done, because I've now done, you know, 2 projects since that, that haven't been released yet. But since that, I've now been like more, I've been like liberated as an actor. You know, I've gone into it saying, no, let me take more chances. Let me take more risks, you know, let the director tell me, no, that doesn't work. Like, stick to the script. But now I come in saying, um, I'm going to take a risk here that I might not have taken otherwise.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy again. And my question is kind of similar, but I actually wanted to focus on the complexities. And one of the things we hear a lot is that it's so hard to direct yourself. And so since you're starring in the movie, also co-wrote it and directing, can you talk about like some of the difficulties you faced directing and acting at the same time?
Yeah, I think the toughest thing for me was being comfortable with not knowing. And I say that because, like, you know, when you aren't directing yourself, when someone else is directing you, you're able to talk to the director, you're able to get feedback. The director sometimes might show you, okay, so this is what we just did, this is how it looked. So I'd like to move the camera just a little bit so that we're getting you profile, but keep this same intensity here that you're seeing here. You know, like you're able to have conversations. But when you're directing yourself, you're not able to do that. You know, it's like you're in your own head, and there's no one, you know, you can't go back and watch things like you can for other actors because we don't have that much time in the day. You know what I mean? If I can't do a scene and each take go back and see what I did, we just don't have that amount of time. And so you sort of have to go into it without knowing what the result is going to be, and because you're servicing everyone else, and you're putting everyone else sort of before yourself. So I think that was the toughest thing, not knowing what the heck I was doing and how it was turning out, because of the sake of time. But outside of that, I I think it's different for everyone, and for me, directing and acting at the same time was not as big a challenge as I was told it was going to be. Again, like for everyone, it's going to be different. For some people, I do know people that have told me they would never direct themselves. Like they could never, they can't do it. They don't, that's not their fault. They have to just be the actor or just be the director. But I spent a lot of time watching interviews with people that had done it before. From like Robert Townsend to Bradley Cooper, to um, Denzel and Jason Bateman and whoever it might be. I spent time watching their interviews and just trying to grab certain things from them that made the process a little bit easier. And at the end of the day, it wasn't as huge a challenge. I actually really loved it. Yeah, I actually enjoyed that, and I would do it again in that same way. I would direct on my own again, and I would direct myself again and will. So I enjoyed it.
Nice. Thank you so much. Fantastic.
Thanks, Nancy.
Nnamdi. I personally think you're one of the most gifted talents that we've seen this generation. So thank you very much for your time again, sir. This is a very good movie, and we're certainly happy to be able to support it.
Yeah, I
On
appreciate it.
behalf of the world's largest group of Black film and TV critics, we thank you for watching this edition of AAFCA Roundtables. Have a great day.
Thank you.